Okay, I'll get my thoughts on part one. Now, I like the way of how MATPAT tells the story, but for a theorist, it feels very fan fiction and it's not really like the greatest thing. And one of the problems I do have is that MATPAT literally just brings the puppet carver Fazbear's Fright story into the story and uses it as evidence that William Afton got taken out by Henry Emily. That happened for a fact because puppet carver does it. I don't get it because William didn't get taken out by another company. None of that happens in the original story. I know my 2 timeline videos said that, but those were just kind of just doing what MATPAT was doing. And the grand example of this being that and also saying that William got mad because Ned Bear copied Fredbear's the character encyclopedia says that could it be an imitation of Freddy Fazbear? So saying for a fact that they're copies is rip-offs does not mean the same thing. I don't get it of why people think that. Part 1, it was just telling about how they made they left off of making Fredbear's Family Diner and Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and the Chica's Party World thing that MATPAT did. I don't get this because Chica's Party World, I don't know. Is Chica's Party World even canon or even exists in the real universe? I don't really think so. I think that it might. Okay, I don't get of what. I don't completely understand, but okay, I don't but I don't really get it. MATPAT, I'm not the greatest fan of part 1. I like the storytelling, but as a theorist, it's not great for the most part. And I prefer if MATPAT actually looked at the evidence that we had and not focused on for the Fazbear's Fright, and then maybe I could have been much better with it. Now there's part 2. Part 2, there's not really a lot of complaints except one thing. Michael being the player character from FNAF 4. Okay, now I believe this. I believe that Michael is the player character in FNAF 4 and not the crying child. I am so confused as to why a lot of people still believe that we play as the crying child. Why am I calling him crying child? I just like to call him freaking Evan Afton, for God's sake. Evan in FNAF 4. There is more evidence that we play as Michael, and I don't things like the character encyclopedia seem like they're outright suggesting that we play as Evan in FNAF 4. We already have evidence that's most likely Michael. It's kind of nearly impossible that we play as Evan. And Michael, William uses the illusion discs to have the nightmare animatronics haunt Michael from his bedroom. While we don't know for sure whose FNAF 4 bedroom belongs to, we don't know for sure. It's so confusing because Michael, he's gonna think of why does he have all these toys all in the room? That doesn't make sense. It could be Evan's room, but in the layout in the mini game for Evan's room, it seems, but it could just be a coincidence or something, or it might just be the format for the mini game that Scott Cawthon wanted to do, and that's why I just didn't put the original bedroom. So that's why. But overall, I think he still plays Michael, but I think that there should have been a more better explanation, a little bit more better. I don't in saying that the twisted ones I don't remember, but really, it's not really the biggest problem with part 2. And the one thing that's got me on my mind ever since is saying that at the end he said that Elizabeth seems like she's the first victim of Five Nights at Freddy's as a whole. But MATPAT goes on to say that it doesn't make sense because William would not build a circus baby with a giant claw in her stomach in 1983. That just doesn't make sense. Inhabiting it before Evan's death also doesn't make sense because it seems like that we don't exactly know who was murdered first in the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Besides Mrs. Afton. Just stop it. That's what I think, but who knows? I don't know know, but like I think it's Evan. I mean, Charlotte is a good answer. Charlotte and Evan are a good example of what the first victim is. Elizabeth is not. Like, and I also don't. Thinking. Oh yeah. So really, I think I kind of liked it that he said that because I never believed that Elizabeth was the first victim, even though a lot of people say it. I see it as a lot of a common thing nowadays, and I don't believe that Evan saw Elizabeth's death either because there's only one kid in the room, and that was a girl. That was Elizabeth. How would Evan be able to see? That makes no sense. I'm pretty sure William would have like boarded up windows to make sure. I'm pretty sure he'd be protective of what his robots did. He would be protective of it, so that's why. So how would Evan be able to see it? Maybe there are some other speculations, but overall, I just don't think that's the case. I think that Evan's really the first victim, and that's what sparks William to murder Charlotte, then the missing kids, second missing kids. Then there's, and then Elizabeth's death happens. And then there's, or let's start with the next one. Part 3, I am mad about is because MATPAT is wrong with Michael and his motives. We have complete evidence that Michael is that he wants to help his father, but MATPAT's saying of how Michael is working against his father before his complete murdering spree. I don't like Michael, but that's not true because we have evidence from sister locations, Michael's dialogue, I'm going to come find you, that I found her just like you told me to. We have proof that William told Michael to go down to the underground location and was told to find Elizabeth down there. We have proof for that. In saying of how Michael just found it down there because he was looking for William is not really true. This is how I think it works, is that William sends Michael down, but then Michael finds out about his father's secrets, and that's when he starts wanting to go get revenge. Michael was not working against his father before sister location. He was working with his father because of his guilt after killing Evan. That makes sense. And I don't get that either. Also, the one thing that some people agree and some don't. Only a little bit people agree that Henry, who we play as in FNAF 3, because like William's attacking his own son. So like, what does that mean? I don't know. It's not impossible that he plays Michael, but I have a hard time actually believing if we play as Michael or Henry. I personally think we play as Henry. I personally think we play as Henry in FNAF 3. I don't like. Also, the vengeful spirit thing. It's probably not Cassidy, is because we know from the character encyclopedia that Evan has brown eyes, but it could be like the zombie eyes and like the vengeful spirit in Ultimate Custom Night, and it looks a lot more identical to Evan, and it looks much more like him. And some people are saying, "Oh, it's Cassidy," but it just doesn't work because we know what she looks like in the survival log book based on the picture, that she does not look like what she looks like on there. Like, I know and it's so confusing. It's like, oh, the one you shouldn't have killed, which should be Cassidy, but then somehow but there's some mystery that continues to remain around of how Evan remains the one you shouldn't have killed. I don't see it. Maybe it is, but I don't really see it. Expect that maybe before that William killed Evan because he was in his coma, because it was the thing to do because he was stuck in a coma, which I think I can kind of agree with. But overall, that's the biggest problem with part 3. MATPAT is completely wrong with Michael and his motives. But then we have the worst part, and my main criticism of this Ultimate Timeline is the end part. I don't like this one. I'll explain why. First off, is MATPAT saying that Mrs. Afton, he calls him Clara. I'll just call her Clara because MATPAT does. I'll just call him Mrs. Afton because because Clara is literally the name from Immortal and the Restless. Like, Clara, I'll just call Mrs. Afton, that she's the one who is in charge of Fazbear Entertainment LLC. and she's the one responsible for bringing Glitch Trap. But I'm like, Mrs. Afton is like 90 years old at like 2035, like when Security Breach takes place, like in her 90s. She should be like worrying about other things, or like going to retirement home or something or whatever. Not just being an evil, or not being an evil genius or anything like that. She should be worrying about everything else, like about retirement and health. Not like worrying about, like, it just makes no sense. She's like super old to be able to do that, and we have no proof in the story that she has remnant, that she used the remnant take, because she probably didn't. And other than that, Mrs. Afton, it just doesn't make sense for her to like come back, because she's like, so, first of all, she's so old, and second of all, I know there's not a lot of evidence, but it could be. But I think that from the Security Breach ruin, which I'm actually excited for, so I didn't like Security Breach, but I'm hoping that ruin will maybe fix some ways, and somehow maybe give us some more answers of the modern timeline, because the modern timeline has so many unanswered questions. So like, I'm like, yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, like, for the most part, like, and it's saying that, like, Mrs. Afton builds Gregory based off of Evan, which I can do, because, like, from the character encyclopedia, Evan has a band-aid on his, like, on his right leg, and Gregory does too, and that's why he's built off of them. But there could be, so you could be saying that Robot Elizabeth is the one who's in charge of this all, like he said. But then he realizes, but then what is Vanessa's role? And MATPAT's saying is that Vanessa, like, Mrs. Afton is using Vanessa to, like, that, like, to be, like, come a, like, recreation of Elizabeth, because it's like, right hair color, right eyes. Yeah, I can get that. But then then MATPAT says right age. Oh my god. Vanessa is 23 years old. And Elizabeth is like 7 or 9. Like, they're not the same age. Like, I don't get, like, what is, like, I don't get, like, what is wrong with this timeline, but jeez. I don't get it. Like, it could be true, but it's just probably not true. Like, I don't, like, saying that Vanessa is supposed to be a recreate, like, Mrs. Afton using Vanessa as to be, like, her, like, replacement of, like, Elizabeth, and, like, become, like, rebuild her family. It makes no sense for Mrs. Afton to build her family in such a twisted way. Like, ruin Vanessa's life, kill people, hey, make animatronics, kill people. That's not what Mrs. Afton does, because Mrs. Afton breaks up with William because William focuses on Fazbear Entertainment more than his family. So, like, what? That makes no freaking sense. Like, MATPAT is, like, just being crazy there. I don't, like, understand of why this is even, like, a thing for the most part, but I don't know. I don't understand this timeline. It's out of my mind. I don't know. Maybe I can get it off my back and just forget about this. Maybe part 2 is probably the best part. Part 3, part 1 were not nearly as crazy bad, but then part 4 just really takes the cake. Like, I think that also, like, Security Breach is really hard too, because it ruins the FNAF story. It's like, because, Charlotte and Emily's haunting the pizza plex. We can see in the game files at the door says Charlie door, so that makes sense. For the most part, I can agree with that. I can actually agree with that. But, like, just saying that, like, the one thing that I seem to understand is that, like, a Security Breach is hard, but overall, just doing things like that, saying how Mrs. Afton, and that saying that Vanessa is supposed to be for Elizabeth, does not make sense. Like, I don't, like, understand that, but I don't know. Not a lot of, I think that's what makes me kind of upset about it for the most part. It makes me kind of a crybaby. I'm just kidding. I'm not a crybaby, but it's I don't agree with this timeline. Have your own opinion all you want, but, like, I think that maybe Security Breach ruin MATPAT should do another rewrite of the Ultimate Timeline and look at all the evidence that we have and actually, like, try to wrap it up in a way that matters and actually try to do something that works. And not just saying about, we're just using the books to confirm things, and that's not true. You don't use Fazbear's Fright in Tales of the Pizzaplex to confirm things. We just take freaking anything. Boom. That's why it's getting so confusing. Stop taking everything. And that's my biggest issue with this Ultimate Timeline, is that MATPAT is just wrong with Michael and his motives. And overall, is just this timeline, I don't think it's the best to do. And overall, what did I think of the Ultimate Timeline? I think that part 2 and part 1, where I think that the Ultimate Timeline does have really good storytelling, but for theorists, it just doesn't really work. I think that part 2 was pretty decent, except for that one thing. But then part 3 and part 1 and part 4 just didn't really do really good. Sure, part 3 only has that one issue, kinda, but I think you need to realize that we all believe different things in this timeline, and if you disagree with me thinking that Evan is the vengeful spirit, then that's completely okay. And I'm not exactly mad at MATPAT. I'm just kind of I'm confused at him that he would do something like that, just confirm things by just saying of how she seemed, because Vanessa is supposed to take Elizabeth's role. It's just weird. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video, and bye. It was nice talking about this. I'll do some more Five Nights at Freddy's content over the summer, and even a Little Big Planet. But overall, I'll see you in the next video, and peace out. And maybe I might do another rewrite of the entire timeline, that actually the one that I believe, and not my other two main ones. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video, and bye.